Hello. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, sounding good.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and get started with the tech update.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen.
Awesome, Ralph.
So this is community update 85. I think everybody is able to see the screen, right? Legible.
Yes,
So we have since the last update. Basically, we released 0912 last Friday, and the release plan documentation for that is over here. The main thing we released there was Genesis ceremony and completing the Genesis ceremony. That took a lot of work by the team, kind of cross team, looking at the issues that were causing high memory usage. Going back and forth. There are still some issues that we're still working on that I'll go into briefly on that. But release 0912 is in there, and here is the release notes on that on 0912. You will see that in addition to Genesis Vault ceremony, we have a bunch of other issues. Looks like it's still loading here, but down here, there are a lot of different issues that were fixed. So I'll come back to that in a little bit. Right now, the issue we're working with on Genesis Vault ceremony is required SIGs. When we give it any number of required SIGs, the behavior is inconsistent. So we're trying to investigate that issue and really find out what's going on. Other than the Genesis Vault ceremony, the couple of items in focus for the current sprint 35, are long proposal times. And this was something we discovered on the testnet, and progress in cost accounting. So as far as cost accounting is concerned, we had quite a bit of discussion on that this morning. So there is some progress made in cost replayability, but there is also still some work that needs to be completed there. And then once that is in place, the cost accounting components would be able to use that to be able to do proper cost accounting. So we're trying to specify all the remaining pieces of cost accounting and try to parallelize the development so that multiple people can take on different parts of that. So that's the work going on in cost accounting. We did make some progress in investigation of long proposed times and some fixes. There have been some code improvements in Casper to address this, and that has reduced the proposal times. But then there are still additional areas of investigation going on in there too, including this replays of compute states to see why things are taking as long. So we're continuing that work. There are a couple of demos that we started working on, a demo of validator bonding. So sometime next week, we should have that available, and then a demo on Genesis ceremony. So those are the two things that we're working on. And other priorities kind of remain the same as what we discussed earlier. We're increasing the amount of testing. And what specifically we're doing there is we're taking apart the incentivized testnet documentation and saying which of those things are relevant for what we need to do, what are the priorities, and to enable those tests, what are the pieces we need to have in place to be able to do that. So there's quite a bit of activity going on in there in increasing the amount of testing. And then several optimization and bug fixes are the other ones that are going on. There is a plan for the Dimworm came back to us and said that he and the Chinese community would like to test the Genesis ceremony. So we're kind of preparing them with whatever they need, the keys and everything else that is needed for them to conduct that test probably next Thursday. That they normally test on Thursdays, so that's kind of what we're preparing for. Greg, did you want to say anything more on that, on the Genesis ceremony testing by the community?
No, I'm just excited that there's so much engagement, especially from our Chinese partners. I really would love to see this happening with every major feature release, that different groups around the world organize themselves to verify that the feature is in place. That's a really, really good model, because then we can get sort of consensual validation. My God, it would be science and engineering, which would be fantastic. So I'd love to see that happening on a more regular basis. But I'm really delighted. I think it's caused the team to also galvanize and make sure that, okay, oh my God, they're the community members are going to test. Let's make sure that we've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. Let's make sure we're all in agreement about exactly what's being tested and how we can support that effort best. So no, it's, to me, this is very, very encouraging what's going on. Over to you, Rao.
Yeah, I would add that basically we're kind of trying to move to this culture of let's release something, but also demo and enable community testing of that, and then get the feedback from the community testing. So I think we're trying to do that more and more with most of the features that we will be releasing. So that's kind of that's where we are. Let me see if the release notes stuff has picked up. I'm not sure why it's still loading, but anyway, this is available to you, this 9.12 release plan, and there are items, you can see there the list of items that were worked on in addition to what I kind of highlighted, talked to here. So that's the tech update. We are planning for Sprint 36, which will start Monday. So those conversations are in process, and then I'll speak to them in the next dev update. So unless there are any questions on this, that's my update on the tech side.
I would add that NetZipper has been leading an effort to go through the bonding process, which apparently hasn't been validated in a while, to make sure the documentation is up to date and that we can bind with the testnet, starting with the sandbox network on that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jim. Like I said here, we are working on the validator bonding testing and demo ourselves, and the bonding has not been tested in a while. Originally, we were hoping we would have it for this session, but it'll take a few more days of work on that. And in that context that you just mentioned, I know NetZipper also shared with me a document saying here is what the community would like, type of thing. And I have not reviewed that yet. It just came this morning or late this morning. So I will be reviewing that with Chris and Greg, and certainly facilitate whatever of that is feasible to facilitate relative to the current priorities. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on the tech part of this, part of the debrief?
I guess I just want to clarify, this is officially, now we're on testnet 2.
That's correct.
Okay.
We're in testnet 2. Thank you. Yes. And we're closing in on we should have a nice finite list of things left to knock down before we get cost accounting, which is the big hurdle that we have to cross. And once that's done, then things become a lot easier. So Artur and I will be going through the sources of non-determinism in replay. So people, in general, people should be aware as a part of their resource planning that cost itself can be non-deterministic if you have non-determinism in your smart contracts. However, once a particular trace has been decided, so that means particular branch in the non-determinism has been chosen by the consensus algorithm, then the cost should be the same for all replays of the trace. And Arthur had discovered some sources of non-determinism in the replay. And so we want to go over the replay code and make sure that there isn't any more non-determinism in the replay code that could result in a different validators coming up with different costs after the trace has already been settled by the consensus. So that's where we are in the process, and that should be relatively straightforward to ferret out. It's a finite number of cases to consider and a finite amount of code, so should be able to knock that down. And then once that's done, there are some system deployment things we need to take to implement. So these are system level events such as charging that have to be taken care of. And then the bulk of the cost accounting should be taken care of. So just want to give people an overview of what's happening there. Okay, any other questions on the tech side? All right, moving on then. So we have received the Q1 and Q2 reports from Ledger Pro. Tim rightfully observed there were still some inaccuracies on the balances. For example, they still included the R house as an asset, even though we sold that some time ago. So we're gonna get feedback to Ledger Pro on those inaccuracies and get those corrected and release the reports. But we did finally get the reports back from them. So we should have those. It looks like we've got one more round trip to do with Ledger Pro before we get complete and accurate quarterlies and get those out to the community. Also, I received a note from Miller Nash. So we have the brief in hand. They decided to make it confidential for the board. I have read in the board and the C-level officers on the brief. So they will be able to confirm what I'm telling you, that they do indeed agree and provide legal documentation that there is a risk. There's a risk with the having the concentration, 50% or greater concentration of rock in the hands of the co-op. So that has to be changed. We do not want to risk, or let me put it this way, we want to remove all known risks that we can for having the token judged a security, because that would dramatically decelerate the usefulness of the token, diminish the usefulness of the token. So we have that piece in place. There's another piece we're waiting for, and then the board will take an action. But I want to let people know that this is underway, and we do have the legal documentation in place. I have asked Miller Nash if they can prepare a redacted form of the brief, so that we can because this idea of making it board's eyes only cuts across the purpose of the brief as well as the co-op's goals for transparency. So that's it was a bit of a surprise that the brief came as marked for board's eyes only. But I've sort of given you the TLDR version, and we'll make the try to get a redacted form available to the membership. Any questions on either of those 2 points? Okay. In addition, it has turned out that Chinese community members stepped forward and claimed all the rest of the the expansion of the second tranche. So that was closed on Monday per the member sale agreement that everyone has access to. And so the second tranche is completely closed out. And we'll enter into the third tranche when we enter into testnet 3. So I just want everyone to, know that there's considerable interest. There continues to be very good interest. We have been approached by 2 major news outlets about wanting to do discussions with RChain. We'll see if those are good fits for us, but there's continues to be considerable interest in RChain now that we've sort of turned the corner sort of through the crypto winter. Also, I want to remind people that there's I think it's August 25th is the deadline for submitting applications or nominations for board members. So anyone interested in joining the board brain, please submit your applications. Now is the time to do that. Any questions on any of those topics?
Yeah, Greg. So on the topic of the co-op getting below the owning 50% of the tokens and its relation, I think, to changing IOB 5, which was passed last year, do we have a roadmap of which to execute on that?
We do indeed. We have a very clear roadmap which the board is marching to. I'll talk about that roadmap in the closed door session on Friday.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, but thanks for the question. It's a really good one. Okay, so moving right along, I wanted to mention and promote RCast, the most recent RCast, which was completed today. We go over it's a really active and lively conversation with Christian, Isaac, and myself on the square root calculation and how that relates to fault tolerance. It's the slides are already up and available. I posted them to some of the Discord channels, but it's a lovely result in the sense that it's small and self-contained and pretty easy to reason through. The slides contain more or less complete calculations, so you can see see how it works. But it essentially shows that you can, for the row calculus, I don't know how to do it for pi. If it can be done, that's cool, but I don't know how to do it for pi. But for the row calculus, you can calculate the square root of a process, which is fantastic in and of itself, just as a mathematical phenomena. It's fascinating. But it turns out to have direct relations to fault tolerance and consensus. And in fact, the solution that is required ends up being a little tiny leaderless consensus protocol, leaderless distributed consensus protocol. It's small enough to fit on a page, and the calculations are small enough to fit on 2 pages, the proof of the correctness of the protocol. And this is, it's not a proof of Casper's correctness. Those proofs are more subtle and require more human ingenuity, but we're part of the work that I'm doing is to try to march us to a presentation of the key aspects of the protocol in such a way that we could automate the proof of the correctness. So, so that's a really fun addition to the RCast family. And I think, Derek, do you know when we'll have the transcript up?
Transcript tomorrow. The episode probably about another 2-3 hours. I'm about halfway done editing now.
Awesome, fantastic, really good. So I think that's about all we've got for our community updates. Any questions, comments, anything some people want to talk about? Going once, twice. Awesome. Thanks to everyone for showing up, and we'll yield back 38 minutes to the community. Have a good day, all. See you next week.
Thanks, Greg. See you.
Sure. Ciao.
Thank you. See you.
Bye, everybody.